Welcome to today's episode brought to you by Total Processing. We are joined by Mark Livings, who is the co-founder and CEO of Lyres, the non-alcoholic spirits company established in 2019. Lyres was created to replicate the world's most popular spirits in a non-alcoholic format. The brand has entered more than 60 countries worldwide and has listings in over 50 major retailers. The company has recently raised a further 20 million with a valuation of over 270 million pounds. All of this in less than 3 years. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Harry. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for coming on today.
Still spins me out hearing the company described like that.
Amazing. Like, what a journey. So, I mean, if you could go back to the start, how have you created this absolute beast?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess I've always been in food and beverage. I started my career in a meaningful way. I worked a petrol station console for a couple of years and sold car stereo systems for a bit. But got a graduate role with the Coca-Cola company.
Okay.
Arguably one of the greatest marketing companies of the last century.
And that was in Australia, wasn't it?
It was, in Sydney. And incredible sort of branding and marketing pedigree at the very beginning of my career, learning from the best. And I did that for 3 years. And as much as I loved it, I loved the marketing craft. I loved, doing what I was doing. I really didn't like the big business dynamic. So I've always had a bit of a problem with authority, I've got to be honest. So after sort of learning the ropes for 3 years, I decided to sort of continue that marketing and branding journey, and I went to the advertising agency side of the industry.
Okay.
I did that for about 3 years as well, and then I founded my own marketing agency with a co-founder when I was 29.
Amazing.
That was about 12 years ago.
Wow.
We grew it to be the largest independent marketing agency in Australia.
Wow. And what sort of marketing was that then? Was that a cross from social, paid, etc.?
Yeah, look, that wasn't a thing when we started. So we actually started as what's called a shopper marketing agency or a retail agency. So think about anything that goes on inside the four walls of a traditional retail outlet. Mm-hmm. That was our specialty. But then we expanded further above the line and then through the line as well. So it's now a full service agency. And we really specialise in the CPG or consumer packaged goods sector. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's referred to as the FMCG space or fast moving consumer goods. We built the agency, and the normal journey that agencies would take is they get to a particular size, and then they often come here to London to try and apply their craft to some of the largest brands in the world, or they go to Fifth Avenue in New York and try and do the same. We did something really different, and we built down the vertical. Nice. So we built a printing and packaging business.
Okay.
We started importing point of sale materials and merchandise. We founded a logistics and fulfillment business. And we then started a technology business to tie the whole stack together.
So it's like end-to-end commerce then, yeah?
End-to-end commerce. Nice. So the beating heart of it was always that branding piece for CPG sector brands. But we realised that, it was just logical to expand, keep going down the vertical. We realised we had an incubator.
Okay.
And after 2 or 3 years of me unsuccessfully selling that to my clients, I realised that, I believe in this, my clients don't, maybe we should launch our own consumer product. And that's really where the Lyres story begins. So we wanted to really test a couple of hypotheses out. And one was, can a small entrepreneurial team scale a business faster than a traditional global multinational CPG giant? Mm-hmm. Can we apply the Silicon Valley style business model to a CPG sector company? And what happens if we get the brand manager or the marketing team typically sat across the other side of the table out of the way, and we let the agency produce something that's unfiltered and very creative? And Lyres has been the result. Nice. So we worked out we could do everything outside the bottle. Yeah. And we had a high conviction on the category going, look, people are drinking less globally. We started to immerse ourselves in it. We had some personal resonance with it. I'm the wrong side of 40 to keep drinking like I was when I was in my 20s. And us Aussies and Brits share a
big drinking culture,
massive drinking culture. And I'm from Queensland, so that's the Leicestershire of Australia, if I can put it in those terms. Yeah. With apologies to Max if you're listening. Sorry, Max. Love you, buddy. But the business came together under those convictions, and we started looking for a way to produce spirits that we saw as the opportunity, because the beer market had already started moving. And it took us around the world, and I landed in Germany, and I ended up working with arguably the world's leading beverage technology company called Döhler. They're based in Darmstadt. And they helped us make these now award-winning products that the world has seemed to have fallen in love with, and the ride has been absolutely wild.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah. There we go. So you obviously have this agency, and you built it to one of the largest, private agencies in Australia. Why did you then want to? I obviously understand your reason for wanting to create a brand, but then you obviously had to step away from the agency then? Yeah. And was that, how did that, sort of transpire in terms of with your other business partner, etc.?
Yeah, look, it's that's why you have co-founders. Yeah. And look, that business was approaching a point of, deep maturity. It was 12 years old, about 150 staff across the group, and we'd appointed CEOs of the different divisions, so it was really good timing for this brand Lyres to come out of nowhere and really steal my attention personally as a founder and entrepreneur. I knew the business was already in good hands, and we sort of had an inkling that it was going to be explosive, so we could sort of rearrange the pieces on the chessboard to account for my departure really quickly. But I have to say, I've got an extraordinary co-founder in that group of businesses, Mick Hall, and he's moved in to, run that group. So amazing. That's easy business is teamwork, as we like to say. So yeah, he's now the player coach.
Nice. So can you give us an idea behind the name Lyres? Where did that come from? How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so it wasn't me. I'm not going to take credit for that. That's my outstanding creative team at the Kinetic Agency. Initially, we were going to call the business Zero Proof, and we had these packaging designs, and it just really wasn't resonating. It didn't feel like a brand that you could build an emotional connection with. It was way too functional. Yeah. Anyway, one of my creatives discovered this amazing native Australian animal. Not discovered like in the wilderness, found it, but discovered this incredible thing. The Lyre Bird it's an endangered bird. It comes from the southern part of Australia, and it's very unique. It can reproduce the bird song of any other bird that it hears in the wild. Oh, amazing. It's part of its mating ritual, and it's part of its defense ritual. So, if there's, something looking to steal eggs, it's like, I'm a big scary bird of prey. Or if it's trying to seduce a mate, it, produces these beautiful bird songs from across the range of birds in its environment. So we thought, given that this is arguably nature's greatest mimic, and it's Australian like the founders, why not? Because it feels exactly where we should gravitate the brand towards. So on our neck, you'll find a little lyre bird in a top hat. His name's Horatio. And then what's interesting is when you shorten Lyre Bird to Lyres, you get this amazingly snappy bar call. So I'll have a gin and tonic, but make it a Lyres, please.
Yeah, love it.
So we love the idea of there being a little white lie, a little secret between you and the bartender. And as a brand that had global ambitions and category captaincy ambitions, what I've known from a career in marketing is that if you control the language of the category, your brand becomes virtually insurmountable. Mm-hmm. So here in the UK, you say, my Hoover's broken. Now, it could be any other brand, but you're meaning vacuum cleaner. Yeah. Or pass the Kleenex, and that's a box of tissues. And when brands have achieved that kind of level of ubiquity and they've started to enter the language that people refer to the category as, that's an incredibly powerful brand that people continue to build without your advertising expenditure when they describe it every day. And that's definitely what we're going for with Lyres.
Amazing. It's definitely going to get there as well.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm sure it will. So let's go back to the start of the business. I
Sure.
believe it took 3 years to actually come up with the product.
Yeah.
How did you go about finding these manufacturers that could help you make the product that you were looking to create?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting story there in that I've got a decent sort of nose and palate. Wine was a very big passion of mine for a very long time.
Nice.
I tried to do it myself, and I ended up working with Derla, who I'd worked with previously with other projects for clients of ours.
Okay.
But I just wasn't getting it right, and there were things missing. So the magic really started to happen when I'm like, this isn't working. We're spending a lot of money in product development. I'm not hitting the bullseye that I want to hit. And the standard that we set for ourselves is we wanted Lyres to be able to be used like the existing alcohol-containing spirits. So if you're making a Mai Tai, you can reach for a bottle of Lyres rum instead of the alcohol-containing rum and use it in exactly the same way and get exactly the same result in the glass. So that was like the high watermark that we set for ourselves. And if we could get a spirit to that standard in a non-alcoholic format, then it could come into the range. Anyway, so a good friend of mine, David Murphy, he's a restaurateur and a sommelier from Australia. A little bit of a teacher of mine with regards to, developing wine skills, the art of enology, as we call it. Yeah. And I was struggling, and I said to Murph, "Hey Murph, do you want to come to Germany with me?" And he said, "Why?" "Yes, but why?"
Yes, but why?
I said, "Well, I'm developing this range of non-alcoholic spirits." And he said, "Sorry, what?" And I explained the whole thing. And when he stopped laughing, he agreed. And we ended up sitting in the labs, looking at this library of over 21,000 ingredients that Derla sourced. I think they procure from 39 different countries of origin. And we started working. We wanted to work with only natural or organic ingredients.
Okay.
And then we really put shoulder to the wheel for a number of weeks. And it took several trips to Germany to get the products right. But we had our breakthrough moment. And I remember getting a vermouth, like a sweet vermouth. And we absolutely nailed it. And it was such a magical moment when we realized that this thing that I'd been trying for a number of years and bringing my friend into the mix to help, and he just could put his finger on exactly what was needed, what was missing, or what shouldn't have been there. It accelerated the process so quickly, and we very quickly built out a range of 12 products. And a lot of people think that that's insane. Why would you launch 12 products? The range is now 14 products plus 5 RTDs, so there's 19 products out there. But we had a very clear vision that we wanted to replace the back bar and help people have whatever their favourite drink or cocktail would be in a non-alcoholic format, should they choose. And we had a really high conviction that people wanted to swap in and out of the alcohol category like I did. I still drink alcohol from time to time. But during Monday to Thursday nights, I don't want alcohol. I've got to perform. I often have meetings late at night, or we're on deadline for a client. So we wanted the option so I could still have my favourite drinks, but just move in and out of the category containing alcohol in a frictionless way and have it be my choice. But in order to deliver on that promise, we needed this relatively huge range. We were called stupid, idiots, imbeciles by beverage professionals when we first started this. But we had the belief that we were doing something that would be usable by the mixologists of the world and usable by members of the public. And we knew that the world drank differently. And what is a popular drink here in the UK is not in the United States and is certainly not in downtown Shanghai. So we wanted this really broad range to help people, move in and out of the alcohol category as they chose, and that's why we started with such a big range.
Wide range, nice, brilliant. So you've got the product now. You've created that in Germany. You want to launch back in Australia. How do you get into these retailers? Obviously, you go direct to consumer as well via your online website. How are you gonna, or how did you grow the business then?
It's an interesting one, and it's a very different path from what most CPG sector brands take. The vast majority of brands that are launched belong to a major multinational company. So these are enormous global machines that produce in breathtakingly large quantities in a consistent way, in a high quality way, and they're able to support, major retailer listings. And look, if you're a retailer, you go, look, I don't want this startup that may or may not be able to supply. I give them some shelf space. I need to make that few square inches really work for me as a supermarket player. So for a new CPG category brand, direct-to-consumer represents an amazing avenue to build a business. And what's also really interesting about direct-to-consumer and the CPG sector is that the large multinational companies and the retailers have a bit of a sticky relationship in that it's very difficult for the major multinational CPG companies to innovate and embrace direct-to-consumer because the retailers get upset and they say, hey, no, you work with us like you have the last 50 to 60 years. We're your boys. So it's very, very difficult for a major company to go, we're going to launch this brand, we're going to take it D2C and we're going to build the brand there. And the retailers get quite upset by that. So inevitably it ends up going through the supermarket. And the brand owner has its relationship with the consumer disintermediated by the retailer. They can't talk directly to the consumer anymore. There's a retailer in the way. So for a challenger brand like Lyres, without the existing, business arrangements of major retailer arrangements, we're afforded very different routes to market. So to answer your question, and that context is really important, we built our brand D2C first and an independent retail first. And given that it's a beverage, we've recruited independent spirits retailers as well as bars and restaurants and the like up front before we'd secured our major retailer listings on the way through. And for us, beverage has always been a really tricky thing to build in the D2C space because traditionally it's very heavy, it's fragile, packed in glass, it's low margin.
And I suppose it's shifting, sorry to interrupt,
not at all.
The consumer mindset. Like, not many customers or consumers go to, let's use one of your competitors in the alcoholic space, Bacardi, and would buy a bottle of gin or Bacardi rum from them. They'd go to the supermarket, wouldn't they, to purchase. So I suppose it's trying to shift the mindset that that the consumers already have. I take it that was probably one of the biggest challenges for the business as well, was it? Or?
Definitely. And look, we analysed the Google search data really early on. I won't say the oldest trick in the book, but one of the oldest tricks in the book. And we found that people were searching for a drink that they wanted to make. They weren't searching for the non-alcoholic spirit that would go into the drink. So the long tail search data showed that how do I make a non-alcoholic Manhattan, or how do I make a non-alcoholic margarita? So we realized that the world was looking for the drink, and then how do I make that drink? They weren't looking for the rum or the bourbon or the gin. So we lent into that and go, well, we've got this massive range. Let's have a cocktail and drink-led strategy. So that changed everything about how we build our website and how we funneled traffic coming to us initially. But what's really interesting about that as well, it's really hard to show a retailer that because you can't articulate that on a supermarket shelf as well. So D2C had a number of benefits for the business as it was growing and scaling. And the other thing about our product being non-alcoholic, it doesn't have duties, taxes and things. So it's not particularly disruptive to the UK, which we're sitting in today recording this podcast. But in somewhere like the United States, there's those state borders have prevented the scaling of the D2C liquor capability of the market, and the US is a long way behind markets like the UK. So it gives us an incredible advantage, and it affords us a level of maturity in D2C that you won't find in the traditional spirits companies for, one, the major retailer relationships, two, because they're big, slow, lumbering organisations, and three, often they can't operate their business effectively in a D2C space because they need enormously complex supply chains that they don't want to invest in.
Yeah, definitely. So how long after you launched your D2C strategy did either you start approaching retailers or did retailers start coming to you then?
A bit of both.
Okay.
So I'd say, well, one of the things that happened straight after we launched our D2C strategy was the pandemic.
Oh, right, yeah.
And
that little thing.
Yeah, that small, slightly disruptive thing. So our strategy, and this is a very common strategy for any beverage alcohol brand, is you build the brand in the on-trade. People will discover it there. So if you have a new beer to sell, you go and buy a pint, and if you like it, then you'll go and buy a few bottles for your fridge. If you don't like the pint, then you've only bought a pint. It's not a big deal. The same is true of spirits. So people will try something, and if they like it, they may find it in their cart when they're next at the liquor store or at a supermarket. That channel, the on-trade, the restaurant channel, was completely removed for us. So with all the lockdowns. So we were left with only our D2C business and an opportunity to sell to the major retailers of the world. So we got our skates on and we said, look, in order to keep this business growing, we need to do two things, really and aggressively grow the D2C. And we need to secure these major retailer listings as quickly as we can around the world. So we had to completely change the strategy of our business on the fly. And one of the really interesting things that we discovered, and it's a little reward for doing the right thing as a business, we employed around 30 what we call brand ambassadors.
Okay.
So they're people that are specifically recruited to represent our brand to the hospitality sector, so bars, nightclubs, pubs, restaurants, etc. And they all of a sudden had no bars, nightclubs, pubs and restaurants to go and visit. So they're at home and I'm going, we've got 30 people, I don't want to let them go because they won't have jobs back in the industry they came from. And I don't want to get anyone on the breadline, so we put our thinking caps on. And we ended up integrating them into our digital offering. So we quickly cobbled it together using like Calendly and our EDM system and so on. And we basically pushed an offer out. So you buy any 2 Lyres products and you can have a free mixology lesson with a master mixologist in your home during lockdown. And it was an extraordinarily effective strategy. Amazing. So we built incredible brand loyalty. It humanized the purchase. It's not just here's 2 bottles of our stuff, enjoy, see you later. Maybe here's some tips on the website. There's a human on Zoom in your lounge room going, "G'day, Gary. Hello, Karen. We're here to teach you how to use your products." Amazing. And it just made the brand super sticky and built this incredible loyalty. And we found people coming into the brand and buying 2 or 3 or 4 times just to get another half hour with whomever their favourite mixologist was. And it's a really nice story from the pandemic. We managed to save pretty much every single job in the business.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And we discovered something that no one had ever realised before.
Definitely. And
that you can humanise a purchase through D2C, and our brand has been an extraordinary beneficiary of it.
Amazing. And I had read that story very briefly, I think, in one of your previous interviews, as well as the business being digital first. A lot of these CPG brands are very archaic in their approach. It's very retail led. Obviously, what you're doing is disrupting the market. Do you feel that disruption, that you're playing digital first, provides a big advantage compared to the other CPG brands you're coming up against?
I certainly think so. And look, the pandemic did change the landscape to favour digital first brands, but this was always going to be our strategy. Yeah. It was an advantage that we could exploit given the nature of the business, given that myself and my founder Carl are massive nerds. We love data, we love tech, and we've got this pedigree in e-commerce. It was a no-brainer for us to really lean into that space. Amazing. And it served the business extraordinarily well and helped us build a really compelling global brand.
Brilliant. And none of your employees are office-based at all, are they? They're all working remote?
No, we're about to tip over our 100th employee.
Wow.
Which is, it's a bizarre milestone to happen so quickly. But the business since day one has been entirely virtual. And that was planned. Mm-hmm. We didn't need offices, that sort of physical infrastructure to do what we were doing. And we were very much on platforms like Zoom, collaborating, using shared workflow tools like Monday.com, and Dropbox for file sharing and so on. And we recruited a young, quite savvy team as well. So we had an accidentally pandemic-proof business just by sort of leaning in that way and running a business in a more efficient manner.
Amazing, brilliant. And after year one, I heard the business was already valued at 100 million or circa 100 million, which is incredible, for a business today and age to have that explosive growth. What would you say the key things for that growth were for the business from a marketing, operational point of view, etc.?
Yeah, it's I guess high growth or hyper growth businesses, and for any listeners that are unaware, that's businesses with more than 300% year-on-year growth sustained. So hyper growth businesses are valued very differently from standard growth businesses, and the thing that really allowed us to achieve that was we were thinking global from day one. And it's a very common mindset to say, I'm going to get my product or my brand right in my home geography. So I'm going to get it right in the UK, then I'll look to the world, maybe Europe. We sort of threw that rule book out and said, no, let's go global from day one. How are we going to be in 100 markets in 3 years? Yeah. And let's start with the big prizes and we'll prioritize those, and then we'll build a plan to do it. So that, more than anything else, really helped the business achieve the levels of growth that investors were looking for. And you need to recruit appropriately when you set those kind of very audacious goals for a business. So we built what we like to call the Navy SEALs of the beverage industry into our team. So we recruited some extraordinarily capable people that had an entrepreneurial mindset and could scale the business as quickly as we had ambition to. So that, more than anything else, that global first mindset was the one thing that really enabled us to achieve that valuation so quickly.
Brilliant. And then from an internationalization strategy, you obviously focused Australia first. The pandemic hit, which obviously was a big challenge for the business. How then did you sort of pick which countries to move into and expand across sort of specific regions then?
Yeah, so we targeted the English-speaking world first. Okay. It's less barriers to entry for us and the core team, and then we prioritised in terms of either ease of entry or size of the prize. So United States, 360 million consumers there, an English-speaking market, of course. That was definitely a priority for us. So that was our third market that we launched after Australia and New Zealand. And then, of course, the United Kingdom, and then the big block of places like the EU was definitely somewhere we were focusing next. But places like Singapore and Hong Kong, we'd moved into very early. They've got very large expat populations. They're typically quite wealthy people, and they're very health conscious. So we thought and hypothesised that there was a decent prize there in those markets. So by the end of 6 months, we were in Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and the UK. And there was planned to launch another 30 markets within the next 12 months. Amazing.
And is that why you took on the initial round of funding? Was it for that international expansion?
For sure.
And what was that sort of capital used for? Was it personnel, marketing? And could you give us a bit of an insight into how that was deployed?
For sure. Interestingly, an enormous amount of it was used in travel. So myself, my CRO, Connor Hardy, we travelled probably 250 days of 2020. I did 200 days almost of 2021 as the year's coming to a close. I've still managed to keep moving an enormous amount around the world. So we do spend a lot on travel, and that's, products into the briefcase, go to the distributor, show them what they're capable of, show them how you'll support the brand. So that was a big chunk of the initial funds raised. Then, of course, marketing and advertising. We built an amazing D2C capability and really cut no corners on it. So we used a big commerce engine and then built a stack of sort of, I think there's 25, potentially now 30 different pieces of software enabling our D2C capability. And then, of course, meeting all the distribution partners, talking to the 3PLs that we use to move our product via D2C. And the rest of that all went into marketing and personnel. So we'll spend significantly less on travel now and more increasingly more on marketing and advertising.
And what are your go-to marketing acquisition channels then?
In the D2C space, or
primarily in the D2C?
Yeah, primarily D2C. So search is always, not always, but primarily the most important. Social is of some importance, and it's surprised us the effectiveness of emergent channels like TikTok, in terms of how effective they are in terms of ROI versus the more established ones like Facebook. And being a global business, we're also on the WeChat platform. We've got a Tmall store on the Tmall marketplace in mainland China. And then, you need to be on Flipkart in India and Redmart in Singapore, and hilariously eBay, which is still bigger than Amazon in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, so all these idiosyncrasies add up to a huge piece of infrastructure building that you need to tackle. But all those marketplaces are all really important to bringing people into your brand and helping them find your product.
Definitely. And then conversely, on the wholesale into retailers, what's the marketing strategy and marketing play around that side of the business then?
Yeah, a lot of that is just liquid to lips,
sort
of showing people what the product can do, particularly publicans or bar owners, going, hey, look, you're losing revenue here. You're selling people who don't want to drink club soda or Diet Coke, or they're not even coming through the door.
Yeah.
Let's get them something elegant, sophisticated, elevated, that's far more profitable for your business and leaves them a far more satisfied patron. So having that conversation with distributors who would then tell their sales force of 20, 30, 100 people this story to take to the world, that was really important with regards to unlocking that hospitality sector piece also.
Nice. So two completely different angles on that.
Yeah, and as the category evolves, we're going to need to turn our attention to more powerful but blunter instruments than the ones we've been using. So we're at the point now where we need to start considering traditional advertising, outdoor signage, etc. One of the biggest challenges that our category has is saliency. So we're still sitting between 20 to 30% of humans in somewhere like the United Kingdom know that non-alcoholic spirits are even a thing. So there's enormous upside for our brand and our category simply by telling people that they have a choice. So as category captains, it now falls on us to solve that problem, and we need to use tools like traditional advertising now in order to build that awareness, which will result in organic growth.
Yeah, a little bit of education as well to the market as well.
For sure.
Brilliant. So you've recently done another raise as well for £20 million. Congratulations firstly on that. And what will the funds for that be used for? Again, is that, I take it that's primarily marketing, pushing the brand further. And then sort of secondary to that, internationalization from here on in. Have you got aspirations for other countries, or is it just to build the footprint in the countries you're already established in then?
It's a bit of a combination of both. I think we're at the end of chapter 2 of our international expansion, and there's one more chapter to go. So we don't really have a footprint in LATAM. It's a very, very regulated market. We have recently entered the Middle East, and a lot of that's to do with the research and development that we've been doing within our business. And a lot of the use of funds, which was part of your question, of course, will go into continuing research and development. We want to maintain our leadership in the liquid quality space. Our brand's received more than 300 international wine and spirits awards in the last 2 years. And look, we're extraordinarily proud of them, and it's very credibility building for the brand. But we can't rest on those laurels. We have to continue to innovate and improve our products. And when I said earlier that we run the business like a software company, we do. So we're going to issue patches and upgrades to our products as they're in market. And it's a very different mindset to how traditional beverage alcohol would play this 100-year-old recipe, and I can't deviate from it, which is fine if you're a heritage brand, but we're not. We're an innovative modern brand. So R&D is a big, important pillar for what we're investing in. And it's unlocked places like the Middle East for us to sell into, which is easily the most regulated beverage markets in the world. So we're there now, and we'll be turning to scaling, increasing that rate of sale, increasing awareness, etc. And then, of course, we have places like North Africa and Asia Minor. So we haven't yet started looking at places like India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, enormous populations. And part of that population is extraordinarily wealthy and alcohol-free. Mm-hmm. So we have an incredible opportunity, potentially, in those markets also. So we're not done yet with geographic expansion, but we're certainly slowing that down and turning our attention to building the brand, increasing rate of sale, and so on. So big use of funds to that is we are growing the team from a personnel perspective. I like to think we're post-COVID, but some of the developments this week in Austria and the rest of Europe show us we may not be out of the wilderness yet. Yeah. But the hospitality sector has reopened globally. And we are high conviction that there will be a hospitality renaissance. And I was wandering around London here. Yeah. The place is absolutely buzzing at the moment. And if you look at the economics of why, is you've got hospitality operators that are trying desperately to make up for the
last 2 years.
open close of the last 2 years. But you've also got household savings at the highest that they've been in almost 30 years because of the pandemic also. So people are cashed up, they're looking to reconnect with other humans, and the hospitality sector is the natural place for them to do so. But we hope they're carrying different consumption behaviours into the hospitality sector as they come out of lockdown. People are enormously more health conscious, and that's where our brand helps fit into their choices and the lifestyle they want to shape. So they don't have to give up their gin and tonic at the pub with a mate. Yeah. But they can elect to have it with or without alcohol, and that's where our brand lives. So yeah, to close out the question, lots more team members that are hospitality sector focused.
Would that be across various regions or remote as well?
Globally, yeah. Yep, all remote workers. Yeah. We still don't have an office.
Are you is that a plan for the future, an office, or is that too far down the line to
I
say?
Can't see it, to be honest. I think the world has fundamentally changed, yeah. And I don't think there's any reason whatsoever to have a head office anymore. Nice. And we saw it sort of pre-pandemic with the rise of co-working spaces. Yeah, yeah. I think we're going to see how humans work fundamentally altered by this pandemic, and I think we're a little ahead of the curve on that. Amazing. So yeah, lots more people, marketing and advertising, research and development, and that's pretty much it. That's what we need to do.
Brilliant. And sort of final few questions to wrap up. Where do you see the non-alcoholic space going within the next few years? And do you think there's going to be a tipping point where it reaches sort of equilibrium in terms of people drinking alcohol to not drinking alcohol?
Potentially, but next few years, and there's a few very useful analogues for us at the moment. The vegan diet is the fastest growth diet in the world. In places like the UK, it's over 5% of all people are now vegan. So it's 1 in 20 humans out there in the world are vegans. Wow. They walk among us. For the plant-based dairy category, this is something that's incredible to me. Talking 10 to 15 years ago, it was in the single digits or less than 1% because it was soy milk or rice milk being sold to the lactose intolerant.
Yeah, there's no alternatives, was there really?
Not really, no. And look, in the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen the rise of brands like Oatly, as an example. But what's really interesting is we've seen the establishment of a dairy-free milk alternative category that's, in the mid-teens now compared to total dairy. So, they're probably the most mature at 15% of total dairy. If you look at animal-free proteins, call that 5%, and we look at alcohol-free alternatives, we're still around that sort of 1 to 1.5% mark. But exactly the same thing is driving our category that drives the plant-based milk category and the plant-based proteins category. And that is increasingly people are looking for a better-for-you product for them. They're changing their consumption behaviour. And whilst people that enjoy oat milk probably still have a scoop of vanilla ice cream from time to time, their basket when they come into the dairy category has changed completely. So in the next few years, we believe, and this has been something that I've changed my opinion on in the last couple of years, we believe we're going to sit at sort of 4 to 5% of the spirits market by the end of this decade. And that's an extraordinary number. To give you some context, spirits globally are around $300 billion a year in sales. Wow. And if we take 5% of that market, that's a $15 billion opportunity by the end of the decade. I might be wrong, but all of my spidey senses are telling me that this thing is a thing and it's going to continue to relentlessly grow. And it's an amazing feeling to be at the forefront of the category as it's disrupting very traditional categories.
Amazing.
It's an interesting time to be in the CPG category.
I can imagine. I can certainly see it going that way as well. And finally, to wrap things up, so in the next 5 years, where would you like the business to be? Where do you see the business being? And what's the overall goal for yourself then? Yeah.
I guess when we founded the business, it's really important to set those BHAGs or big, hairy, audacious goals. Yeah. So why do we do what we do? We want to change the way the world drinks. And that's what we tell everyone who comes into our business. And that's the vision that, as the CEO and founder, that I share. And then the second part to that question is, how will we know we've achieved that? And that's where I can answer your question. We know we've achieved that if there's a bottle of Lyres behind every bar in the world. And that's our objective, is to have it universally available so people can have their drink, their way, and have it be their choice. With or without alcohol, it's up to them. So that's the goal for the next 5 years, is to deliver the business to as close as possible to that vision. And for me, I'm having a really good time doing what I'm doing at the moment. I hope I don't need to stop. And I take a lot of energy and a lot of joy from getting to work with the amazing team members that I've got and the amazing partners in the D2C space, the retail space, the manufacturing space, and the shipping and supply space. They're not my favourite at the moment, but they're still important. I'm really motivated to keep this thing going.
Amazing. Brilliant. Well,
awesome.
We wish you the best of luck, and I'm sure you will be an even bigger success than you already are.
Thank you, Harry.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on.
Real pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.